So
Howdy.
yeah. Howdy, it's Getty time.
It's been a while since I've seen you, Joey.
Yes, I miss you and I'll be seeing you soon, I'm sure. I'm feeling ready to get out and about again and
Mhm.
y- maybe my 2 to 3 year quota of getting out. But I'm gonna do it.
Every once in a while coming out of your hibernation. What are you like 79 at this point that you're living in your little hole? 31, is that the new 79?
Yeah, yes, it is. It is.
You turn 30 and just everything instantly changes overnight. Suddenly you just can't
I
stay up past 9.
I turned 35 years ago, so I'm way past due.
You're looking at a good 35. Although I just made fun of us for not being able to stay up past 9, but it is 9:03 right now, which is
I
very
know. I know. Be very proud of me.
I'm always proud of you regardless, Joe.
Oh, yay!
You're like a son to me if like your son could be older than you. But except also I look up to you. So not really. You're like family to me.
You're the son I could look up to, Joey. That'll be on the tombstone.
Very exciting. I mean hopefully if I outlive you, it'll be on the
Yes.
tombstone. We'll see.
Yes. Yes. So, Shape of the Crowd 11 is out.
Yeah, they said it couldn't be done. We're
Oh, they said it couldn't be done.
we're turning it up to 11. Um, there's this weird misconception, which is probably a failure of advertising on my part, where like a whole bunch of people were like, Shape of the Crowd 11. I thought you were done after Shape of the Crowd 10.
Mm,
I never said that. I said I might leave Asheville after 10, but I didn't say I was
gotcha.
like done making art and being a person out in the world after 10.
I
And
gotcha.
that is the natural byproduct of being a person out in the world for me is to every once in a while have like a zine fall off my back like a snake shedding its skin. It just kind of happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I had some time right before all this to go through it all and Um, I really, I really like your opening statement here.
Yeah.
Your forward, it's very touching. I just wanted to,
Usually I'd make like a bunch of space for like a whole bunch of thank yous. And then
yeah,
as much as I cherish that, I also realize that like if you try to thank everybody, you're gonna like leave some people out because that's just the nature of like making things on
yeah.
paper. And then it becomes more about who you didn't thank than like who you didn't thank. And it's like some people like after I came out with that book, it was 120 pages and covered 5 years. And I had a few like of my close friends and bands come to me, and I won't name them because I'm not trying to out them, but very sweetly be like, I'm kind of surprised you weren't like in it more. And I was like, oh, it's not because I hate you guys. It's cool. I love you. You're awesome. I was just abbreviating my career. I don't know. And like, yeah, but you've shot us so many times. And just I'm sorry. It's just
Yeah.
so, and I don't want anybody creating conspiracy theories about like, oh, well, this person was in the thank you notes for Shape of the Crowd 7, but not 8. Like, what happened between 8 and 7 and 8 where now they hate each other? Like, no,
Whoa.
it's just,
Anybody who can start that theory or that Reddit thread deserves like free issues from here on out. That's a hardcore fan. Somebody that can like, oh, in this one,
and
it's
like, you would think it like doesn't matter, and I'm being crazy, and I'm just like a person who's just like known somewhat locally in a little scene, and like I'm assigning way too much importance to myself. But I've had it where like without thinking about it, I just like unfollowed an account on Instagram, and then I'll get a message that's like, "Hey, why did you unfollow us?" I'm like, what?" And they're like, "We have a plugin that tracks everybody who follows us and doesn't follow us, and so I got a notification that you unfollowed us,
and
and
then
we just want to know like, is it because of this thing I said to you at the show?" And I'm like, I don't know, because it's Instagram, man. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
yeah, yeah, you should be like, why do you think I unfollowed you? And then they just dish out everything that they're just like want to confess.
Yeah, every insecurity they've ever had towards me.
That just motivates me to just randomly unfollow people and see if I get hit up now.
It's really I have to admit, like I like to think I'm so above the social media game, but I'm absolutely not. I absolutely care how many likes a post gets and how many followers I've got, and like watching that needle go up and down. I am so not immune to it.
Yeah.
And uh, like I got to be honest, a lot of times, like maybe once every 3 months, I'll sit down and look at all the people that I'm following. And if they haven't posted within the last 3 months, or all they've posted is like a picture of their kid or something, I kind of will go and unfollow them to keep that ratio
I
wide.
guess so. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Do you feel
it's so
like
funny
do
to
you
keep
feel
up with
like
it.
having the print like zine helps combat the digital weight of that? Like,
Oh, for sure. Because like I don't have to. Unfortunately, zines and stuff have their own numbers associated with them. Like if I, it's not a total escape because I'll print like 100 of them, and then it's like, how much money did the zine raise? Did it break even? How fast did it break even? Well, volume six broke even in 1 week. And this one has taken 3 weeks to get there. How many people are ordering how many? The regulars that I've had, like, are they doing it? So it kind of like flips it around. Like I may not keep track of who unfollows me, but I know which like zine subscribers didn't go for it the last two times, even though they got like the
mm,
first eight or whatever.
yeah.
Um, but I also don't make like insane, insecure assumptions about the like intents of those actions, and I just chalk it up to keeping up with a printed material is actually kind of hard. Genuinely, as someone who I myself really love some artists and photographers and musicians, and I've got like some photo books sitting right next to me, and I love everything that a lot of artists release, and I wish I could participate in all of it. And that's not how finances and keeping up with stuff works.
Yeah.
So the zine is a little freeing that like it gets to be physical, and I get to flex a little bit of like ridiculous graphic design stuff because it's not optimized. It's definitely not the kind of graphic design that like a graphic design instructor would grade well because it's so like crowded and crazy. But it's like definitely fun to crack my knuckles and get into Photoshop and look at what I've been doing. And then I put it out and it's like I feel like I did something the last however many months it covers. And it's fun to hand people a thing and go to the post office with a thing and feel like you're interacting with people. That's really fun. And that does take away a lot of the like bitterness and fakeness, and like I kind of curate myself on social media. I'm super not embarrassed about my political views or afraid to share them, but because of the diversity of people who follow me, I make no uncertainties about what I'm cool with and what I'm not cool with for sure. Like nobody should have any questions about what I'm about, but it doesn't mean I want to have a conversation about it every day. So like I keep it
Yeah.
pretty businessy, pretty photography focused on my public posts as much as I can, just to kind of cut down on the amount of nonsense I have to deal with for
Yeah.
sure. So that I am free of that in the zine. And this zine, this big type up you were talking about, was a big, giant, long political rant, honestly, about
But it,
trying
it
to.
didn't feel like a rant.
It was just me trying to like. We just had Hurricane Helene here in Asheville and got annihilated about it, and it's like changed a lot of people's lives and ended some people's lives. I have close friends who lost literally like everything. My friend Mad Max, who I've known since I first got in the scene, and bands like Bombay Gasoline and Machine 13, her house was destroyed. My bandmate in socialist anxiety, he lost his whole house and everything he had. So all things considered, I came out pretty lucky. I don't know if I'm gonna really be able to continue in Asheville after Helene. But like I didn't die, I didn't lose most of my stuff, and that's not me like looking at the bright side. That just really is how I feel for once. So I typed up this big thing on the first page of the zine I just released. That was me, I guess, trying to process my thoughts about like Donald Trump just won the election. Like, I am finding myself in my conservative hometown a lot, surrounded by people that fundamentally are not interested in understanding me. And like, we were just hit by Hurricane Helene, which is a consequence of like climate change, which is a consequence of like capitalism, which all of this can kind of add up to make people like me feel very powerless. And I feel like giving into that powerlessness is like exactly kind of the hand that those in power want you to play into. And I guess it was like a big long rant against like giving into cynicism while validating the temptation to kind of give into cynicism because we're all so exhausted by design. So that and to make room for that little rant meant boiling down my thank you notes to just, hey, thanks to everybody who keeps this existing and keeps me around having fun and gives me meaning instead of naming a whole bunch of names, which is less personal but more thorough, ironically.
Yeah, no, I don't think I didn't come off as a rant at all to me. It felt like I felt like it was like half the zine, like in a weird way. It's only one page, but I felt like, wow, that was the first thing, obviously the cover, and then like taking time to chew on that and read it. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then going through the zine, and it starts, January, 26. I'm like, whoa, like knowing in hindsight the things you know now kind of thing. It's one thing to have, previous zines you've gone through. I'm like, oh, I remember this past year. Or like, hey, that's when we were kind of dusting off the pandemic. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And this one was just like, oh, wow. Like, you have photos of Bombay Gasoline playing. And thankfully they played a show at Static Age recently, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, and like, but still, it's still crazy to see people that, I've been in touch with through the hurricane and everything, and seeing them in their element, and that's just like that's what you're talking about, not giving in that cynicism. And I'm like seeing people I love and care about like in their element embodied in a zine, and I'm just like, yes, like, instead of like getting absorbed by all this stuff and feeling helpless. It's like, no, like this is a reminder of like when we're at our best, and this is really, really special about your little, zine that came out after the book, when you said you were going to stop and everything,
Yeah.
when you said you were retiring officially from
Yeah, that's
legit.
definitely the statement I put out where I was like, after the book comes out, I'm crawling into a hole and never going to watch the show again. I'm actually so the big reveal is I was turning 30 on the day the zine came out, so I wasn't allowed in the scene anymore after after 30. Um,
Yeah, you're
but
out.
I everything you just said, it makes me think about a lot of different things. I went to school for art because I'm a loser and not a real punk. I really went to college to like put off growing up because I needed some time away from like my conservative hometown to figure out who I was. But that was like one of the conversations I had while I was in school for art is like the idea that like some photos are not very special on their own, but when put in context up next to other photos, they can like become greater than the sum of its parts, as they say.
Yeah,
Uh, and I,
context is everything.
yeah, and that's another thing I love about the zine is like I don't want to say it is art or isn't art. I'm not really ever like interested in that conversation ever. I think the people who like want to ask about what is and isn't art usually have like something to defend or something to like protect. Um, but like the zine is me not really, other than the cover, I don't really edit anything artistic out of it. It's like very raw and honest, like here is documentation of the thing happening in front of me. And I take an interest in each of those photos because there's moments I care about, but I do think that like all of the it as a booklet, as a like thing you hold in your hand, that is like, 6 or 7 months of photography of this particular subculture from one person's perspective. Like I think that adds up to be something more important. So I think a whole lot about what I write before we get into a zine. Because if you're somebody who reads Shape of the Crowd, I don't know what your audience outreach is. I'm sure there's a few million people watching this right now that I'm going to need to
Oh yeah.
explain this. There's only 100 copies each volume usually. So if you're one of the lucky few that gets your hands on it, um, you'll know that I don't really write much in the zine. That first page is like it, and then the rest is like thank yous and credits and like image descriptions. Um, Very, very rarely do I insert like any kind of perspective in the zine, and it's usually just a paragraph, if not maybe a page. And it's like a half page because of the way the zine is folded. So what I'm getting at with that is like I have to choose what I'm going to talk about very carefully and be very pointed at it, especially because it's the first page. And some people will just fly past it, but for the people that choose to read it, like before you've exposed them to anything, you are now contextualizing every single subsequent image they're going to see
Yeah.
by what you have written in this one little paragraph, this preamble. And even further, the people that follow it really closely and like keep up with every volume, you are not just writing for the context of that volume, but like you are coming back to it as a debriefing of everything. Like if you read Shape of the Crowd 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as it goes, that opening statement evolves continuously, and you can kind of track the feeling of one person's perspective of capturing like a small DIY scene in a small town and how that feels. And you see it get impacted by like things like COVID and presidential elections and Hurricane Helene and other things that we all go through. And I swear, like every zine I've put out since like six has felt like it's a miracle that it happened at all. That's
Yeah.
how it feels to be DIY, to do something that like you can't really survive off of and you just do it for the love of it. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just kind of it carries that fleeting element. I don't think I've ever released a zine where at least one band or venue that was featured in the zine wasn't gone by the time it actually came out.
Which is why I'm glad that you have the zine. Like that's why like when you were first expressing interest in it, I was like, yes, like I want to see this happen. I want this kind of documentation because growing up, like in my DIY community, it was like that. Some of my favorite bands were Fly By Night, you
Mhm.
know, and luckily like we had like MySpace for a minute and like they would exist on MySpace and they would play a couple shows and then they disband or whatever, but their MySpace would still be around. You could at least download some MP3s of theirs and enjoy some of the few low res photos they had and been like, man, that was a cool band. But it's really cool that there's something so tangible and it captures that.
Yeah. And I am going to out you if you thought we could get through this conversation without it. You are what I credit as the reason the zine exists. You were
Oh, it would
you
have
were the
happened.
one to plant the seed and fund the first couple volumes and like make sure it gets off the ground, and like you gave it that kickstart it needed. Uh, if you
Gladly.
if you are listening right now, Joey Wilson at Mythic Merch is
No.
he is the guarantor of Shape of the Crowd, a project I've been working on since 2021, covering photography of the DIY scene of Asheville. And I guess kind of like just this greater region, because I've gone to South Carolina, I've gone to DC with it, um, like, yeah, Tennessee with it too. But yeah, this little photography zine I've got, that was your idea because I was going to have a show at local Harvest Records and I needed a way to fund it. And the zine ended up not being like an awesome vehicle for funding that show, but it was still like cool as its own thing.
Yeah.
And I'm
Lots of
glad you
stuff
enjoyed
learned and
it.
glad to be part of it and so cool to see it off the ground. I mean, I'm just so like we're on 11. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
And
that's awesome. I honestly like a lot of the stuff that I'm into and want to hype up is I'm okay with it being fly by night or just a flash in the pan. So I honestly I was like, yeah, like let's get like this zine off the ground or like what does it take? Like let's go. Like you're on the front lines of like people I love to print shirts for and stuff and like that's that's awesome. Let's see it happen. And I honestly did. And then you're like, yeah, we're gonna do the next volume this many months from now. I was like, oh, let's go. Like I just thought maybe just like one zine. But it's cool. It's so cool to see it continue onward even after you announce your retirement.
you're really killing me with that. I never announced my retirement. I just said I might be leaving from Asheville.
Now that you're
And
semi-retired.
I guess on a personal note, yeah, so the way Helene has gone, the scene is very much so in like benefit show mode for the foreseeable future. And that is cool and good and why I like punk. Um, and I have this weird conflicting thing in my brain where I simultaneously think that under capitalism, like artists should get paid enough to continue to like make the art that people care about. And I also think that like all art should be free and accessible. And like lots of things in capitalism, those are kind of like two, they don't have to be completely diametrically opposed, but they're hard to stick together. It's hard to give something away by donation and also make a living wage off of it. So the being a participant in the DIY scene is for sure proving to and will continue to not be a source of income for me going forward here in Asheville in the wake of Helene. And that's okay because it's all going towards a better cause for the most part. Um, but also in very Asheville fashion, I make like $18 an hour at like a car dealership. And I've been back to my hometown in Salisbury because my house wasn't livable for a while. And just kind of reconnecting with the opportunities back there. And Salisbury is very close to Charlotte, it's very close to Greensboro. So I've been looking at jobs elsewhere, and just everything pays more outside of
Yeah.
Asheville, to
Oh
be
yeah.
honest. This is
Yeah.
such a desert for that kind of thing. And places like Charlotte and Greensboro, for example, and like Carborough and like I don't know, Johnson City, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh and DC and Greenville, South Carolina. I mean, there's just so many places I've been to that do have a scene that is just as active as Asheville. Uh, and also, I'm getting older. I'm 26 now. I'm paying for my own healthcare, and things are changing. So it does look like the whole move away from Asheville is coming to fruition for me. This is probably my last month or two officially living here, and I'm kind of saying my goodbyes and all that stuff. Although I intend to keep up with my friends as much as possible. It's not like I'm moving across the country. Like I'm moving like two
Yeah.
hours away. So I can still like have fun. Like if the band I'm in, Socialist Anxiety, is playing shows, I probably can't play them. But if they're recording music, I can probably come back and like do some
Hmm.
recording sessions. So it's kind of like the relationship I'm having right now. But that sort of gets at like I am not dropping the zine or my relationship with DIY music and art and by any means, even though I am starting to pull away from Asheville in search of like better financial stability and opportunity and just like the next steps in my life.
Yeah.
Um, I'm looking forward to Shape of the Crowd 12 sometime in 2025, and it's going to be the midnight edition because it's 12, and it'll have like my trips to DC and Charlotte and all that stuff, and I think it'll be pretty diverse. It'll be like a third Asheville and a third here and a third there, and
Oh yeah, like Shape of the Crowd on the road.
yeah, on the run,
On the run.
trying to squeeze by. We've gone from it being cool to like crash on couches and sleep on floors to it being cool to like sleep in your dad's spare bedroom and with your like Charlotte friends in their basement. So,
Yeah.
hopefully I get to a place where I can like basically afford healthcare reliably
Yeah.
and still be punk. I don't know if that takes away from my punk cred, but it's part of getting older. It's how it is. But that shit ain't gonna stop. Am I allowed to swear? Should I not swear? Do you have to like bleep that later?
No, you can swear all you want. I'm
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kickstarting this series because I and I think of all these people in my circle that I just like, me, I'm just a big fan of people that I know, and I love hyping everybody up. I like knowing what everybody's dream project is and all that. So I like to think that this kickstarting this series will be like whenever they get really big and famous and all that, people who really want to sink their teeth, super fans can go back and be like, wow, that interview, they were so naive and they had no idea that what they're talking about now is what they're doing and stuff. So that way, when you and Shape the Crowd is a big, massive thing, it is already is, when it's more massiver, then people that really want to sink their teeth into all the Getty lore will come across this. So
I do in fact, that's very flattering, and I'm going to be optimistic and dream with you there. I do there's a lot of ways my life could go that I think I'd be really happy with, and my dreams feel simple and obtainable and very middle class. Um, but um, I do think I have put a significant amount of thought into the idea of traveling around enough and establishing myself in enough places and getting to a place financially and resource wise where I and maybe like a small team of two or three people that I love and trust could do significant work full time, just trying to cover like the East Coast DIY scene. And when I say the East Coast DIY scene, I don't mean like Pitchfork or like whatever, where we're gonna put an ear to the ground on the hot new like top 100 indie bands or whatever. I mean, like you open up a 36-page magazine and you have never heard of a single band in any one of these, even if it's like referring to something in your city. Like I haven't heard of this like crust punk band or this basement venue, and getting perspectives about like what is it like to run a house venue, what makes your house venue unique, like or a place like locally like Fleetwood's, how did that start, and like how has it been interesting to like run the place and the different kinds of crowds that you naturally attract and all of that. I guess this is letting a cat out of the bag that'll like never be able to get out of the bag. But I had me and a group of friends working on a project. It was called Do It Together. Instead of Do It Yourself, it was Do It Together, which is a cute little name.
Yeah.
And we were going to do a video series where we just like interview bands and DIY people and like venue runners and all that stuff about just their story and what like DIY means to them as a culture, and try to give them a little more exposure and try to give like some in-depth preservation. And we found that like doing video work was really, really difficult and impractical for a bunch of people that have genuinely absolutely no funding. But print media is like something that I can do all myself because I'm still young and insane enough to handle the volume of that.
Yeah.
Um, I imagine at some point I'll get older and it'll be harder. Maybe that doesn't have to be the case, but that's how I feel now. Like strike while the iron is hot. But yeah, I absolutely have a dream of like it would be awesome to have like a short run of like 1,000 copies of a magazine that go up and down the East Coast, available at like DIY places, at comic shops or whatever. And if it just scrapes by with enough cash for me to keep doing it and that's it, that'd be enough for me to be happy to keep traveling and keep seeing places and talking to people that like record executives and major publishers and all that would never spend a second giving the time of day. Like zines are a good medium for that because they're pretty cheap and you can put zines online for free and stuff. And I totally respect that grind too. And I kind of have that middle ground of like, I want, like I said earlier, I think artists should get paid for their work. And I also think that art should be as accessible to everybody as possible. So I like the idea that like you can read something for free online. And if you want to support it, you can donate or you can buy a physical copy. And look, I can see this photography here and I own this thing, and maybe in 40 years people will collect it like Playboy. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do people do with magazines now?
No, I like the direction of all that. That sounds like the way to go.
But it do take money. So you're how do I make money without being a dirty evil capitalist? How do I stay perfectly punk and Puritan while funding my passion projects? That
Hmm.
is the question.
These are good questions.
They are good questions. I haven't figured out the answer to them. Donations will keep a small zine going, and that's really cool. And I'm super grateful for that. But dreaming bigger than a book every 4 years is pretty tough.
Yeah.
That book I put out for volume 10 costs about the same amount as a magazine would, maybe like I think $500 less.
Yeah.
But it was also a lot less risk involved for sure.
It's very rare for things to be linear too. A lot of the best quote unquote success stories are very complex in origin, is what I've come across. And it's usually a crazy opportunity that happens. And if somebody has the gumption to, you know, seize it, I guess, you know. So
Yeah.
you'll be doing your thing, and then a random opportunity comes out of left field, but kind of is relevant, and you're like, oh, and I believe you'll have enough confidence to grab it and while there's traction and run with it, whatever that is, you know. It's hard to say like, this zine will lead to this, which is be a sponsor and I have an audience and all that stuff. And I know, you can ad nauseum go on with stuff like that. I mean, we all can. I do, as I probably could. I've done that in my own life and I still do that, but I always have to like keep it open to like, nah, some weird is just gonna pop up and I'll be stupid enough to run with it, and then it keeps going. I'm like, oh, the little plant that I've decided to put some water on that thrives when all the plant I really wanted to grow is kind of doing its own thing.
Yeah, and I think the way I've always looked at like that stuff is like waiting for an opportunity to come along. It's part luck and part effort, and it does have to do with like privilege and where you're at and all that. And so the like metaphor I always think about in my head is like if you're trying to catch like rain in a bucket, and it's like you're not going to catch the rain in the bucket if you don't stand out there with your bucket every single day, but
Yeah,
you be like privileged enough to live in an area where it's going to rain more or less frequently, that has some sort of effect on it and who you are. But also like it's up to the chance of whether it's going to rain. And it's like the reason I use that metaphor is because it acknowledges that like the experience of standing out there every single day waiting for rain to hit your bucket,
mm,
waiting and waiting and waiting can be really exhausting.
yes,
It is unfortunately like a necessary part of the process that you got to keep kind of pushing yourself through. It's like there's so many nights that I don't feel like going out and seeing that show because I don't really know anybody on the bill, and it's like static age, so it's gonna go on till 4 a.m. And I like love this place and all that stuff, but it's like if you never know who you're gonna meet though. Like just
hmm
get outside. Like I know you've got work tomorrow and you're gonna be tired, but like go there, buy a yerba mate for the morning, and just try to push through. Take some pictures for free, have some fun, meet some people, not in a weird, creepy, crony, like businessy sense, but just to like
yeah,
get to know your community and figure it out. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard to do that night after night after night. And it's okay to take some time and like take care of yourself, but it's very easy to fall into those little depression holes and stay inside all the time and like put things off and kind of get all insular and whatever. And I have to like continuously every few months pull myself away from that intrigue. And it's not just about like, my business is going to explode and succeed if I just meet the right person out there. It's also just the idea of like, I haven't been spending as much time out lately. Like I could meet one of the best friends I'll ever have in my entire life if I go out tonight and like make a good connection. If I just got to be out there with that bucket though, maybe not. Maybe you go to
yeah.
some occasion, you don't talk to anybody all night and you feel weird and you go home and you don't think a damn thing. That happens. And that's kind of how I met you, I feel like, because I don't even remember what our like first conversation was, but I know that it was bred from like you talking about something on Instagram that struck a chord with me, and I just hit you up to complain about it. And I was
Yeah,
like, I
yeah.
could have not texted you.
No, it was I was trying to find another place to rent because it was during the retail spike of COVID.
Yeah,
My landlord called me and was like, "Hey, you don't have to leave soon, but when you can you move out? Housing prices are at an all-time high, and we really want to sell." And I was like, and I,
I'm sure I had a lot to say about that.
yeah. Speaking of a lot to say, the free Zoom thing goes up after 40 minutes. So I'm gonna take a break, and then we'll log back on if you're cool with that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. And then I'll probably have some hokey commercial that promotes the zine, maybe.
Very cute. See
Okay.
you.
Well, I'll see you in a bit. So I caught you reading.
Yes,
Is it a book with words or is it a book with no words?
it's a book with mostly pictures and then some words if you're like into that.
Those are my favorite.
Words optional. I hold in my hands uh a photography book by Phil Elverum of Mount Erie, or you may know him from The Microphones, his earlier project. Uh, Especially if you were like really sad in high school and you're between like 18 and 35, you may know this project. But I through Helene, before Helene, I handed out a bunch of my photo books as inspiration to other photographers I was friends with, and I just now got them back, so I'm chilling with them. I've also got Hiro Tanaka's Thanks Sorry, which is a whole book of like Jeff Rosenstock live music photography, which I think is really badass. And these books both influenced me heavily when I went to go make my own book, which was not as big or expensive to produce, but nonetheless an effort.
Were those the what's the guy's name from the microphones? Jeff?
Phil Elverum.
Bill Elverum, not Jeff. Jeff, I don't know. Bill Elverum, was that like the first like photo book that you had that you were like, yes, this is awesome? Or did you have like, was there other things that caught your attention before that one?
I came across a bunch of photo books in college for sure. But as far as like owning them, I think this is the first one I ever spent my own money on and owned because it's like so up my alley, and this dude has such a big influence on me. Like
Yeah.
black and white
Oh yeah.
flash photography of live music in the punk scene in America, capturing the unique elements of American culture through unapologetically loud and present photography where the photographer does not hide himself or try to go stealth. It's just like it is an active participant in this insane culture unfolding rather than like an observant of it.
Yeah. Like I went to this place and I came across this. It's more of
Yeah.
just like I'm in it.
Yeah. It's like here's what it looks here's my perspective of me getting my own ass kicked in a big mosh pit. Like yeah.
Where did you come across this book? Like how did you come across it? Was it like you were a fan of him and you came across their like they released it on a like
So the book Thanks Sorry by Hiro Tanaka um was released alongside I'm putting it in wrong, was released alongside a live album by Jeff Rosenstock, which is a band that I've really liked for a long time, and kind of helped get me into punk.
yeah.
Um, and I was a fan of Phil Elverum's since I was in like high school, and he is a very much so a multimedia artist. So I discovered him through his music, but I became very interested in his like photography and writing and stuff too. But that I credit Phil Elverum a lot because he really teach me about the essence of what like DIY was as a concept. Because if you're not familiar with the Microphones is an earlier band from the 1990s and 2000s that were on the legendary Pacific Northwestern K Records label ran by Calvin Johnson, um, and included things like the Anacortes and Issaquah and Olympia and Seattle, Washington scenes. And they would host those like really big festivals where DIY musicians from around the country would come through. And it was like, if you had enough passion to put together a tape and care about it and like could possibly find a way to break even and sometimes not even, like they would just put out anything. It was like the first like for I don't know that you got that kind of gets into like a big DIY history of like advent of like cassettes and democratization of people being able to like record, copy, and distribute their art, which also shares a history with like zines and photocopying and all that, and kind of wrestling away from the monopoly of things like Decca and MGM and like really, RCA and like really big record companies that really had a huge control on culture in America for a long time. And then like a big DIY indie revolution running through like the punk scene of like the 80s and indie scene of the 90s and the nihilism that came through politically and blah blah blah. Just like whole documentaries about that stuff. But one of my access points was like, yeah, like this dude's work and listening to his old anti-folk records where his voice doesn't sound very good, but millions of people still listen to it. And it kind of makes you think like, wow, I can do that. And you get into Minutemen, like our band could be your life. That could be me making that anti-folk music. And then a few years later, I've totally ruined my life sitting in Asheville making electronic music on my computer. Because all these bad influences I got in my brain when I was a high schooler, because I was following Spotify algorithms about what online image boards think is the best music ever made.
So you have your music project, Juniper Willow,
Good segue. Very natural.
and you're also involved in socialist anxiety, and you've also been in Machine 13.
Yeah.
And are you considering releasing any kind of physical printed material? I guess with Juniper Willow, would you consider, or socialist anxiety, would you consider doing some kind of printed material alongside that, like your influences have?
Yeah, so I really cared about I did put out that photo book, but as far as like music goes, it all kind of ties together in a weird way because you're one person expressing yourself through multiple mediums, so it's kind of like inescapable that they're all like linked in some way. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of musicians, especially those that like collect vinyl, like fantasize about like making a vinyl record, but it's very expensive. So in lieu of that being like a dream one day that I'm gonna have like a red 10-inch double-sided vinyl record of like EPs I've put out, for like Juniper Willow. I have had people ask me like very flatteringly, like, "Hey, your music is really cool. Where do I like buy it?" Like, you cannot. You can stream it, or I can send you the wave files via Google Drive if you want. Um, and like, I've had people come up to me at shows and like, "Where can I support you?" Like, I don't know. I have a zine by donation that's not really about this music, but I have been gearing up for Juniper Willow's second EP to come out pretty soon. And I think instead of like investing money in like a CD or cassette or like vinyl record or whatever, because I don't really have the funds for all that stuff, I think it would be cool to put together a zine for each release I do. So like EP1 and EP2 have their own individual zine and I can print them as I go as needed. And it'd be a cool way to like not only can I get this physical thing from this artist that I want to support, but also like it comes with the download codes inside, and also it has a bunch of photography that is relevant, like a photography and art and writing from like what went into it, and like the influences very blatantly and honestly laid out about like where was I pulling from and who did I rip off to like make this music, whatever. Like that's the kind of stuff I would kill for with probably any other artists I feel really special about. I'm not very good at separating the art and the artist. I like to know as part of the art I'm consuming, like what processes and cultural influences and like life events and all of that, like what was the method that went into it. I've always been interested in that story. Where did the musician grow up and whatever, to a healthy extent.
Yeah.
Uh, so because that's what I love digesting from the musicians I really care about, and also like visual mediums are something I'm very much so invested in and have like a whole lot more like experience with and how I like naturally communicate. And it's like cheap and easy to produce as opposed to a lot of other physical media for music. Yeah, I think just putting out little zines that I can mail to people or whatever with download codes and like pages and pages and pages of what is essentially like liner notes and details and context and photos and stuff would be cool. Um,
Yeah, I think that'd be so cool if like an artist came out with their most recent release and then they had this basically this zine, almost like a zine diary of maybe leading up to the album release or just things that they reflected back on and they want to share through this tangible thing with their audience. That's awesome.
Yeah, if you get a cool vinyl record and if you get like like a CD or just like any physical release that has like some good effort into it, it's probably going to come with like a lyric booklet and some cool like art and some liner notes.
Yeah.
If like the artist could afford to do that or if they were in charge of that. And I guess in that way, I'm basically just selling like a download code that comes with like a CD book insert, That's
Mhm.
I guess that's what I'm giving out. And that's it's funny to say all that because I didn't know that I was going towards this, but this big thick book by Phil Elverum that I keep referencing that I was flipping through now that I've got it back after the hurricane, um, is called Details and Context, and it's just about like everything this dude went through and all the influences he had and all these photos that he's taken while he was working on his projects, the microphones for like I don't know, like 25 years. And I think that's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
hope I can make something as monumental one day. That would be super neat.
Yeah, well, pennies make dollars, so you could do your zine releases with each EP or whatever, and then have the big. I mean, you already have you've already worked out the framework for doing something like that,
Yeah.
where you have the zines and then you have your, you know, big book that comes out.
Yeah. Shape of the Crowd 20 can be another book. Juniper Willow EP 10 can come out on a vinyl record.
Yeah, I think that's cool. So, are you have you been working? You had your Juniper Willow release. You're you have one EP out, LP out.
I have an EP from March of 2023 out. I released a single ahead of it, and I'm about to do the exact same thing where I am currently mixing a single coming from my forthcoming second EP, and I will probably guess like if I'm remembering right, the single I put out from my first EP, Chemical, came out at the end of 2022, and then early in the year in 2023, I came out with the full EP. And I think that's about to happen all over again, where like I'm about to release the first single from my second EP, like right here at the end of the year, and then like early in 2025, you'll probably get another EP.
That's
That's
fun.
eating itself.
Yeah, so you already have like stuff in the queue ready for that.
Yeah, which is exciting and fun. It's
How many
like
how many tracks are we looking at? How many pieces?
the first one, the first EP was five. This one is going to be four or five because I've got five tracks I feel really strongly about, but I'm not sure if one fits into the flow of the other four. So I'm kind of thinking like, do I want to do I want to throw that other track and just release like a forthcoming single with like a B-side that is this track that I won't use or not, or release it on the whole thing? I care about like the release being somewhat coherent, especially if you're
Yeah.
only releasing like five tracks every other year. I feel like you want to make it count. Maybe that's a little too much pressure to put on yourself, but when I'm like, it's weird. It's a little hard to get things done as fast as I can. I know every artist kind of make like every musician makes excuses for like things taking forever to come out. But for me, it's like my first and foremost focus is photography. Like that is number one. And I released a book this year, and I'm in a band. When I was Machine 13 got way more of my time and attention than Juniper Willow ever did. And now, same thing, like as much as I love socialist anxiety, like it's not a complaint, but they just get way more of my time and effort and attention
That's
than
just
my solo project
that's
did.
just the
Like,
nature of bands because it requires everybody being in the same room for
yeah,
rehearsals and it's a time suck. Yeah. I mean
yeah.
it's
So
not time suck, but it's a time that is needed to pursue that project.
yeah. So like I've found that I can make songs all the time, but as far as making like a song that I feel really strong about, like this is worth releasing, this is worth like taking all the way and putting all my effort into and stuff. My like effort is like I know people, especially like Hamish, who was the leader of Machine 13. I knew that he had like hundreds of songs in the pipe and that he could straight up like if he was having a good night go in and like record several songs at a time. And there were demos, don't get me wrong, but there's
hmm
still like fleshed out ideas that were unique
hmm
from each other. Me to get like a full song from front to back and like really feel like I nailed it takes a bit. It's like a song a month or a song every 3 weeks. But it's kind of about finding that 1 month to get to work on that and really fully realize it across like working full-time jobs and being an adult with like healthcare and romantic relationships and responsibilities and being a photographer and doing your taxes for your LLC. So it's less about like not having the time and more that I have time and you just allocate it to other things. You got to like take your priorities and stuff. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I wish I were putting out. I'm sure every artist wishes they were putting out a little more often, but that is just sort of the hierarchy and precedence of where things have landed. So with that kind of course of my life rolling, yeah, I don't know, maybe like a 5-track EP from a solo project every other year with like one single preceding it, and then the full thing is kind of just the pace I'm on right now. That's like the period of my life I'm in, and it's cool to have some consistency and keep making stuff. That's really fun. Um, yeah, you know. So yeah, probably new single before 2025, probably new EP Q1 2025.
Yeah, and at one point you had like a full band for Juniper Willow.
Yeah, so that was
So it
that
started off with just you and you produced everything yourself and then you were
yeah.
doing solo shows and then you eventually found other members to play with you and how was that experience going from, because I dream of that. Personally like having my own little project and then being like, yes, and now there's the band element to it, even if it implodes or whatever, it'd be cool to have that run.
It was a weird venture for a lot of reasons. Everything about it was like crazy. So I'd been doing live shows solo for like a year before that, if not like a little longer. I think it was about a year. And I had to go through all the awkward stuff of like I'd never really been a musician. I'm like self-taught. Like I took like middle school band and like learned how to play trombone, but I never took like singing classes, choir. I didn't like study music when I was in college to any extent. I just like I gotta thank Machine 13 because they just kind of picked me up because I was easy to go along with. Um, and they're like, you'll learn how to play synth as we go. And I did. I just self-taught it and went along with it. And like it was like my friend showing me like, okay, here's the parts. Go home and figure it out. And then you borrow a synth or you buy you get like MIDI controllers and stuff, and you just kind of you spend enough time like practicing for a band, and if that's how you're learning how to do music, eventually you're gonna fiddle around and like find your own stuff. And that's kind of how Juniper Willow happened. And then I was doing these solo shows, which were very like they weren't. I don't think they were bad, but they were awkward. Like you don't know how to behave on a stage, and you don't know how to do all that. Like I'd spent all my time like behind the camera's viewfinder and like capturing that. And now I'm up there, and I know what I like in a band. I know what I like in a live band, but it's so weird to get up there and like do it. And I guess I discovered that I don't really have stage fright, but it's just like, oh, it's so weird to do. And so I had like a whole year of getting out all the really weird feelings and like awkward shit and finding my stage presence and what worked. And like, God, I look back and cringe on my first few shows. And that's just like part of life, as you get better at stuff. It's just natural. You can't avoid it. Um,
What do you cringe about? Have to know. Is there
not
anything particular that comes to mind?
God, a few things. Not having a stage presence, which is like not have like I started a few months into it, like I'm gonna buy a really long XRLK crowd. And it's like my first few shows I was on stage, and that was not good for stage presence. That was very weird. And like I make music where I was just like hitting play on a laptop and screaming. And that's like weird to just sit on a little stool and do that. I was a lot more engaging to go up to people and be in the crowd and like have a physical aspect to it. That and like because people were so nice to me because I was like a photographer in the scene for a long time. The minute I was like, "Oh, I have music," like they're like, "Oh, we gotta like get you on this bill because you're my friends, and also you're really easy to book because you're one person. You don't have to coordinate a schedule." Um, so that like made me pick up shows really early, and like it's gonna be bad no matter what when you first start out. Like you gotta work out the kinks. But it was like I was accepting those shows way too early. It's like I have 4 songs, and they're like, come open up, the biggest house venue in Asheville. Like, come open up for The Mouth Breathers, one of the best technical bands in Asheville, and play your 4 songs. And then, like, I didn't know how to banter, and I felt weird up there. And, like, funny enough, the thing I cringe about most is, like, I remember I played my, like, first show at Fleetwood's, and I thought I was doing funny banter, and it's just like, oh, that was weird. I was trying not to burp, and nobody laughed when I said that. And I was like, and I think about that in like the shower every day that I talked about trying not to burp after my first show. I have like pictures of me sitting on that stool, just like screaming. It's really funny looking back on it. But going from that to then like being self-taught, I am not very good at the technical aspects of music. I can write a coherent song, but I'm at the point where like I barely understand chords. Like I can hear a chord and if it like sounds all messed up, I know it. But like if you ask me to like write like a bunch of if you write like ask me to write a song with like a chord progression that's in a specific key or whatever, like I don't know what you're talking about. Like I'm really at that like low level. And that's only my fault because I'm just not very interested in the technical aspects. It's boring to me. So I don't look at it, and that's my fault. But then to like get in a band with like my band when it became a full band was 2 members from a local band called Feeling Bad, both of which are hella talented. Like Cody Lovell is an absolutely insane drummer. And Anna Lyles was like an incredible vocalist and a really good bassist, and they all have like really good training. And like Elias was my drummer, who is from Social Anxiety. He's the vocalist and like I guess lead. So it's just like all these people who are like way more technically educated in music than me. And it was flattering and really scary to have these friends of mine be like, hey, we like you as a person, and like we've got spare time to be working on other projects right now. Um, And so we're gonna take your songs, which like were written on such a lower level of technical knowledge and what they're capable of, and we're gonna play those as a live band, and not just play them and bring our like intellectualism and our experience to them and our personality to them, but also like put forth the effort where we all get together every week and we practice for multiple hours. And I'm at work and I'm listening to Geddy's music to learn it so that I know like that is a lot of work. And doing all this for like 5 shows that we got to play. And the reason it was so brief is because half my band had to go out of town like by a certain date. So we even knew that going into it. And we are just like, fuck it. Like we just want to play together. We want to make it happen. Like, let's see how much we can learn and how fast we can write and how quickly we can get everything together in like 1 month. And then we're gonna play Fleetwoods and we're gonna play Static Age and we're gonna play 27 Club, we're gonna play this house show, just whatever, you know. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean everything about it was insane. Having musicians who are better musicians than I am interpret my work was insane. Seeing my friends invest all that time and effort was insane. The fleeting aspect of it and putting all that effort for a few shows was worth it and felt like an insane thing to do. Just all of it was crazy and surreal.
Yeah, that's actually I didn't know that about the formation of the band. That's pretty fun to have people who have those kind of chops like take on your work and um yeah, that's very cool of them to want to be involved and do all that because now I feel bad. I wish I had recorded some of those shows.
I'll just say that. And local fucking scene hero from one of the best bands in the Asheville scene, even being Bad Ties, featuring scene
Oh,
hero
Jacob
Jacob
filmed it?
Moran. Jacob was able to record almost like 96%, we'll say, of the last show we played at 27 Club through the board. It doesn't sound like absolutely incredible, but for a live album, it's like pretty passable. And I've got
Yeah.
that in the. And honestly, the only reason I haven't put it out is because we played a whole bunch of songs I haven't released yet. And I
Mm.
feel like it's weird to release a live version
Hmm.
of something officially before you put out the studio version. But
Yeah.
like also at the same time, I'm not trying to make a single dime off of or get like famous at all or like get any sort of traditional measure of success out of like this musical project, especially because like I consider myself a photographer foremost and like music is for sure a hobby, fun thing I do. Um so I kind of feel like maybe I should just that's like ready to go as fast as like music distribution services can put it out. Like I could put that out tonight and have it out as fast as possible. And it's all mixed and ready to go. Yeah, the only thing holding me back from putting that live album out is I feel weird about putting out a live version before a studio version. But that also feels like made up. Like if you're not trying to be, maybe it's not a good business idea to do that, but like if all you care about, my goal with my music is there's probably 13 people I know that want to keep up with it. And if I can advertise it to enough of an extent that those 13 people know that it's out, you know, they don't miss it because I didn't push it out far enough, um, then that's good enough for me. So maybe with that same ethic, I should just put it out. Who knows? I don't know, it's the only reason I'm setting on it is because I feel like I'm supposed to.
No. I think it's cool whichever direction you go, to be honest.
Yeah. What's in my back pocket? If I end up not mixing this single fast enough to get out in 2024, maybe I'll just be like, live album, here you go.
Yeah, I think my train of thought would be like I want to hear official releases and then follow-ups of live stuff. It'd be cool. Or B-sides. I don't know if you're planning on releasing any singles after you've dropped the collection. Sometimes that happens too. People come out with the EP, but they still release post follow-up singles of from things on the EP. So that's also an option too. That'd be cool to explore. Um, you'd have like you drop the EP and then a month later drop like a single from it just to get my attention again, and then on that single is a B side of the live cut of the full band. It'll be neat.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's no wrong way to. I mean, you can look at analytics and stuff. I was gonna say there's no wrong way to do it anymore. Maybe if you're trying to like maximize your social media analytics and like streams and like hit the algorithm and stuff, there's a right and wrong way to do it. But if you're just like me and you're basically making like bedroom pop, like whatever,
Yeah.
the ebb and flow. C'est la vie.
Yeah. So you've got that in the works, and then you were talking about being involved with socialist anxiety if they decide to record again. So I understand the stretch of trying to do the live shows with them if you're
Hmm.
living far away. But does socialist anxiety have any plans to record anything anytime soon, or is that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We got hella plans. We put out a single this year, which was the first single with me recorded on it, which I'm very
Ah,
excited about. And then we've got another single that has been almost done mixing for a really long time now. Um, and that's what happens when you work DIY. And we're setting up to have some more like DIY at home ethic uh, options for recording to get things done a little faster and a little cheaper. So things are certainly gearing up. We unfortunately just lost our bassist Jackson because he had his home like totally swept away in
mm,
the floods with Helene. And so now, as far as I'm aware, he's like living in the Charlotte area for the indefinite future. And
yeah.
even though my like home didn't get washed away in a flood, I'm now in the position where it's like, do I really want to try to survive off of $18 an hour only in Asheville, where things are like known to be kind of brutal from a cost of living standpoint, when I have other opportunities elsewhere? So it looks like I'm getting pulled away too. Um, but yeah, I think we're supposed to be gearing up for a record. This is not like an official announcement of anything, but I know that's just like the direction that Elias would like to go is to try to record a second LP because we certainly have enough songs written and we're getting them worked out. It's just a matter of like this band, a month ago had 6 people in it, and that's a lot of schedules to coordinate. And just like, Elias got pulled in the direction earlier this year of like having to take time out of socialist anxiety to invest in like Juniper Willow. Like now, like 3 members of socialist anxiety are investing in local musician Lady Cabela, whose work is very, very good. I love her and I love her work. Lady Cabela is a solo artist just like me. Um, and she is also looking at making like a full band run. And so it's kind of the same thing over again. So like I said earlier about like trying to record an EP every other year while also like putting out a book and just being in other bands and stuff. That's just kind of how DIY is. Socialist anxiety, yes, is very much in a writing and recording phase for putting out a second LP, but also there's the reality that we all get pulled every which way and we're all friends with everybody, and DIY scenes tend to be very incestuous with the makeup of their members, and
Yeah.
just see how things roll out.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing it all, seeing it all happen for
So
sure.
am I, Joey. So,
What else do you have on the books other than surviving post-hurricane life?
oh, man, I mean, other than totally restructuring my life, I'm trying to stay in like the topics of like DIY relevant work since that's what I do, and I assume that's like what the aim of the podcast topic vaguely is. Um, I don't know. It's weird to go back to my hometown. Shit kind of sucks, but I think it'd
Mm,
be good in the long run. I think it's taught me a lot of messages about like, I mean, I've always been, since I started to like become politically active when I was like 17, like Bernie Sanders was running in 2016, and it was like Hillary versus Trump, whatever. That was my introduction to like politics in a serious way. Um, I've always had this kind of like anti-capitalist and like capitalist like skepticism at the very least slant. And now I'm kind of like seeing, I've loved Asheville for helping me form like into the person I am and stuff, but yeah, like seeing how I don't want to let go of my idealism and the ideologies that I carry and the ethics and stuff that I care about with like punk music and art and like trying to create things and document things, just everything I care about and everything that I've tried to do with my work. I want that to continue. And I don't feel like I'm making any kind of like directional heel turn in the objectives of my art but I think I have been very fortunate to continue with the methods that I have for as long as I have. And I think now that I'm getting older and I'm transgender and I like have to pay a lot for healthcare and I'm kind of getting tired of driving cars that are really scary to drive and like just always needing help and like it's okay to ask for help. I'm just kind of sick of like not being super self-sustaining and struggling all the time. Um, so I think I'm learning now what it is like to try to live a practical life while also kind of doing the honestly impractical thing of being an ethical DIY artist and caring about that and letting that inform your creative process. It's really hard to just go down, it sounds so simple out loud, boo hoo. I mean, I'm not like getting killed in a like mass genocide right now. So on the relative scale of what is hard in life, it is hard um to put out 10 zines in a book and try to have the funds of that continue to sustain themselves from a donation based standpoint, even with like the immense generosity and love of the people that continue to like fund and take interest in that. It is hard to live that life and also live the life where you work at a car dealership for 18 an hour with a 4-year degree. It is hard to go out and play shows every night and get up for work the next morning. It is hard to take the effort and the like state of mind that you need to be in and nurture yourself to be making art and be making music and care about that stuff and express yourself and share that to a wider audience and be a participant in your scene and like help out with benefit shows and just try to be someone involved in your community and involved as a human being while also like living with 3 roommates and 2 cats you're allergic to in a apartment where your room has like one electrical outlet and you're like running like extension cords all along the floor to like try to plug in your PlayStation 4 because you also can't afford a gaming PC or PS5. I'm like, not to boohoo boohoo. What I'm trying to get at is like that DIY ethics are awesome, and I'm not trying to like push some like dumbass conservative value of like, well, when you get to the real world, this is how it really is. But it's more just about like it is challenging. It is actually not easy to do the cool and ethical thing and share your art with everybody and like be a good participant in your scene all the time. It is awesome as it is effort. It is work. It
Yeah.
is work you love, but you gotta like meet some of your own needs for that to be possible. And everybody has different levels of baselines. And as I'm getting older, that baseline of needs is starting to come up from like, oh, I'll get drunk at Hanover House and crash on their beanbag chair and wake up super hungover at 4 a.m. and drive myself home. And then I'll like go do my college classes and work my part-time job and blah, 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 blah. Like sleeping in your car was really cool when you were like 21 years old. And it's kind of sad and pathetic when you're 26 and you got like healthcare to worry about. Like,
Yeah, and also realizing that from a standpoint of yourself feeling that way, because sometimes it feels like, well, what other I think other people think I'm a loser if I do this, and then you start being like, no, I think I'm for me personally, I'm odd if I or a loser if I continue to do this, or like I've done that. That's another thing too. Is like I've done that, and I don't. I want to see what else is out there. I want to know what
yeah.
a cozy bed is like.
Yeah, it's like I used to derive a sense of self-esteem from like in a weird capitalist way. I think like one of the things about capitalism that was really susceptible to with propaganda was like this bootstraps mentality. And it was this weird reverse thing going on with me where like some people might think like, oh, I'm a hustler, I'm a grinder, I work so hard, I'm a hard worker. That's where I'm gonna pull my virtue from because I work like 80 hours a week at this fucking factory or whatever. And mine was the opposite where like I only have a part-time job and I'm so poor and my car sucks so bad and yet I'm so cool for still continuing to do that stuff. And that makes me a badass and a real punk. And now I'm an adult and I'm like there's nothing like wrong with making sacrifices for your work. Like if anything encourage it, like more power to you. But actually like self-care also kind of matters and we live in an imperfect system and compromisation with that feels like stabbing myself 40 times. But maybe there's other ways to like sleep in a warm bed and make my silly little EP. Maybe I can do both without like fucking anybody over. So let's brainstorm really, really hard and think about how to do that. And maybe that means going to a city where I
Yeah.
have more opportunities and the base pays are just higher for the same jobs and the apartments are cheaper for the same square footage.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's exactly why I left Atlanta. It was like I wanted to be an artist, film person, actor, animator, all this stuff. But when you have to be involved like in downtown Atlanta and it's just expensive. And then even if you live outside of Atlanta, you still have to drive into Atlanta, which is expensive in its own ways, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was, I got out and I was like, you know what? Like if it's art that I care about, then I'll figure it out wherever I am, you
Yeah.
know. And
Good.
oh, then that story.
I think the rub of it for me has come to this like kind of crossroads of like I love Asheville. And we're kind of running out of time for this call, so I guess these are like becoming my closing statements. I think it's
No,
very
we
fun.
can we can do another Zoom call. It's fine.
We'll see. If this becomes my closing statement, if it is, if that's the way it goes, I think it's a very good one for me. Um, I realized like I want to live in a really small little house with a cool partner and like a couple of Italian greyhounds and have a modest vinyl record collection. And I want like big fake Dolly Parton tits. And that's like what I think my end goal in life is for like me, not like my community, but just insularly. And I've looked around after like 6 years in Asheville and I'm taking a big breath and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get like any of that as long
Yeah.
as I'm here. I don't think I'm ever going to see my Italian greyhounds or Dolly Parton tits or a cool little vinyl collection as great as the vinyl record stores are around here. Because the income just is not impressive.
Yeah.
Just you got to make that happen. How do you make everything happen at once? Never compromise, never get tired.
That's your motto, never get fired.
I think that's another thing I stole from a documentary called Never Get Tired. But goddamn, what a great title about like trying to survive as like a punk rocker. Like you
Yeah.
can never get tired as a creative.
Well, on that note, I think it is important to get rest, and it's also good to have courage and endurance to keep creating. And that's what I've always admired about you and these projects. And it's been so cool to talk to you more about it and share this with other people who want to sink their teeth into all things Geddi. And thank you for being my guest tonight. It's been a lot of fun. And
Mm.
I look forward to creating a whole series of you on the road and you touching base with me. And it's going to be so cool.
Thank you, Joey, for putting your excess resources into the scene.
My excess resources. The scene funds itself, actually. All the bands get t-shirts done, and then I put it all into zines or weird other things that help out. So I'm just here.
Thank you so much, Joey.
Yes, Geddi. Take care. Have a good evening.
As well.